Hi there, it's me again, Catherine Collert Page here with another writing process tip. We're still on the process portion of the series, and today it's all about taking responsibility for your own writing. So, in the last installment, I talked about how we each have our own individual writing processes that vary depending on our personality, our learning style, our strengths, our tastes, you name it. Our processes vary. And because our processes vary, and because every teacher, critique partner, agent, editor, you name it, these are all individuals too, with their own individual process. You can't get everything you need from one person. And the person who has the biggest stake in your writing success is you. Stop and think about that for a moment. No one else is as vested in your success as you are. Other people might be cheering for your success. I'm cheering for your success. Go you. But you're the one with the biggest stake. So, what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean that we're islands and that we don't need others, because we do need feedback, instruction, critiques in order to survive in our writing. And in fact, I would say the person who doesn't receive any external input is not necessarily going to be the best writer. But it does mean that we're responsible for finding what it is that we need from others and supplying what we need to ourselves from time to time. So ideally, you want to find either the faculty advisor or writing coach or critique group or professor or agent or editor that is at least the closest match for you, but you're never going to get there completely. And sometimes you also might not have a choice regarding your professor or your advisor. Um, that's the person you have, and you're going to have to learn to get along with that person. If it's a professor, that person has control over your grade in the class. And so I can think of a few times where this applied in my life. I had a professor who actually was quite fabulous. She was very good for me, and I learned a lot from her. I'm still in touch with her, and I love her. But there was this one little sticking point over my critical thesis, and I didn't know how to handle it. You know, she wanted me to do it one way. Now I don't even remember what it was, like what I was so wound up about. I think it may have been that I wanted to go all into the hero's journey in addition to everything else that I was discussing in my critical thesis. And I didn't want to butt heads with her over it. She's telling me to do it one way. And so what I did is I went to my class, the dedications, and got advice from them, and Mary Atkinson and Margaret Nevinski and Michele Regenold, Lisa Doan, Frances Lee Hall, Nancy Thalia Reynolds, all chimed in with very helpful ideas. And Michele Regenold said, well, stop and think about it. Who is the audience for your critical thesis? I mean, it's not like it's something that's going to be on national television, excuse me, or the bestsellers list. Really, the only person that's going to be reading your critical thesis for your MFA is your advisor, and so you want to tailor it to your audience, and that really got through to me. I was like, okay, I'm shedding this portion. It doesn't need to be there. And that's a good thing to keep in mind whenever you're writing for a professor, that person is your audience. So even with my students, I would say, if you disagree with me, yeah, sure, come talk to me, because sometimes that disagreement may actually be a misunderstanding that we can clear up, and you might learn something more in the process, and I might understand where you're coming from. Our conversations, as some of you know, our one-on-ones are often very fruitful. But that being said, if you still disagree with me, just remember, I'm your audience, and then later, when you're using that as a writing sample, you can go out and edit it. You know, again, with critique groups, same thing. You know, you can, that's part of why we have critique groups. You don't have to take everyone's advice in the group. Sometimes people have two critique groups for that reason. Sometimes you may have to go outside of your critique group to a writing coach or another friend to get an additional critique. And sometimes you just have to look inside yourself for the answers. Marion Dane Bauer recently talked about this when she blogged, I believe, on the Society of the Quirk and Quill website regarding choosing a critique group. You know, she was saying, think about whether it intuitively rings true to you, and whether it comports with what you know about story rules and with your goals for the piece, and then make your decision from there. I also talked about different learning styles. Again, you're not going to get everything you need from a single professor, coach, whoever. You're not going to get everything from them. So, you know, let's say your professor doesn't provide a lot of visuals. Then that's when you need to go out and find supplemental materials or even create your own visuals. Or, you know, we talked about empathy. Maybe your professor doesn't give you the empathy you need. Well, then that's when you need to go out and find that someplace else. Now, where it gets tricky is when the person is actually a bully. So I think of my second grade teacher. I've actually told my students the story of the second grade teacher in another context. Miss Grant, Doris Grant. She was a very mean lady. She wore polyester suits, and she looked like a witch, and she used to call this kid up to the front of the class every day and make him cry, and she would tell him, I'm going to bring my watering pail up here so that I can water my flowers with your tears. It was so sad. Like, we all were just sitting there. It's like in the concentration camp or something. Like, you're afraid that you're going to be next, but you also feel like you're ratting this person out in a way because you're not coming to help, trying to crawl under the desk. So if the person is an actual bully, you know, then you might want to seek outside administrative help. But sometimes, you know, like let's say it's somebody at a university that has tenure, sometimes you still may even be stuck with that person. And so you're just going to have to learn to survive. With Mrs. Grant, I just had to learn how to survive that environment and cope with it. And, you know, sometimes it means dotting all of your I's, crossing all of your T's. At the same time, if someone is so determined for you to fail no matter what, you do have to get right in your mind that, hey, a certain amount is reasonable, and maybe I'll go a little bit above and beyond that, but not too far. Now, in the next installment, we'll talk about hard work and how much work is too much hard work. And, you know, surprisingly with writing, it's a lot more than you would think. But anyway, at the end of the day, no one can give you everything that you need, and you're the one who has the biggest stake in your own success. So go out there and get what you need from various different sources, cobble it together, and when you have to, give yourself a little bit of something that you need, and you may find that pretty empowering. Okay, right on.